Yay! Hi, beauty.
Hi.
So,
Yay.
so good to see you.
Likewise. I'm so excited to do this with you.
Yeah,
Oh, hi. Last time I saw you, we were in Hawaii.
yeah, we were.
You live,
Yeah,
well, you are in Hawaii,
I'm still
actually.
in Hawaii.
You. Well, I'm really excited to dive into this content today. It's so juicy.
Totally, totally. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So let's just share quickly who we are, and then we take it from there.
Great.
So, I mean, as many of people that are watching right now know, I'm a sex, love, relationship coach and work a lot with couples and with individuals around their relationships, around their questions in love, in sexuality, do group programs, and used to do live live events as well, but of course that's on hold right now. And yeah, generally just have a deep love and passion for human beings, human bodies, human sexuality, relationships. How do we do it? What works? What doesn't work? Yeah, and I think actually we know each other through that shared passion, even though we didn't know that when we met. But yeah,
Totally. Right on. Yeah, and I'm the co-founder of OVA MOON. We're a menstrual cycle, I have it right here, a menstrual cycle balancing supplement that you take actually, I believe. And yeah, it's an incredible supplement that supports menstrual cycle health and balances the body. But I know for us, we were really curious to reach out to you because I know personally my menstrual cycle has really impacted my relationships, whether I liked it or not. And I didn't quite know that growing up. I think I thought that I was always right. And then I would like be really angry and indignant. And then I would get my period and realize that.
oh, that
Oh,
was happening.
so today I was thinking, basically we could talk about, um, I could share a little bit about each phase of the menstrual cycle, and how hormones affect how we show up and how that could impact us in our romantic relationships. And also and then we'll talk in part two about how to communicate with your partner specifically, about the menstrual cycle, how to start that conversation. And then, and what are things you can bring up in terms of like getting permission, getting them over maybe like the ick factor or the ways that they were conditioned to think that it was bad or wrong or gross or something like that. And then in the third part, I was thinking to go into talking about sexual contact in each phase of the menstrual cycle and to really hear from you
Yeah.
about what you've found for yourself as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And yeah, and just to start off with even the knowledge of like what happens in our bodies, like I feel like almost all of us, at least I grew up sort of thinking that, my sex drive is my sex drive, and that's just how it is. Also, that I should kind of be like a stable person. Like it's kind of weird when suddenly you're more tired or suddenly you're more hungry. Like the first, and still I catch myself thinking, huh, what's wrong? I'm more tired. What's wrong? I'm more hungry. What's wrong? Rather than, oh, it makes a lot of sense that I'm feeling how I'm feeling right now. So yeah, if you want to like spread your knowledge for a moment on what actually happens in the body, I think that could be super, super helpful.
Awesome. Yeah. What you just described is so powerfully what I think so many of us described, and we end up feeling bad about ourselves and beating ourselves up that we have different energy in different phases of the cycle. And yet, that really is what's happening biochemically, hormonally. And so, I don't even, I know I was not raised knowing that there were different phases of the menstrual cycle. Like, I thought I got my period once a month, and the rest of the month, like, I don't know. I just didn't even think about it. Why would I? I had life to live. And so part of like the first step is recognizing that we are on this 28-day cycle. We've got our circadian rhythm of 24 hours, which men are also on, but we additionally have this 28-day infradian rhythm that's called the menstrual cycle that we are on. And so similarly, just like you wouldn't drink a cup of coffee or 3 cups of coffee at 9 p.m., you're not going to do certain things during your menstrual cycle, your 28-day cycle, to mess you up later on. And so our cycle, we're changing really every day hormonally, but we can break it down into 4 phases. We've got menstruation, right? Our bleed phase where we're bleeding. We all know that one. And then we've got our follicular phase, what happens after that, which is really the spring of the body, like the springtime, if we were to call it like a season, which I think is really indicative of the love and relational energy that we come to. So then we have ovulation. That's when we're biologically fertile. That's when we could conceptually conceive of a child. And so that is the summer of the body. It's hot, right? You can take that analogy all the way through. And then we've got our luteal phase, which is like the autumn of the body. And that's when the body is getting prepared towards menstruation, the bleed phase again, where we release everything, which is the winter of the body. So that's like the overview, these 4 phases. And I think maybe we start with the follicular phase, the springtime. That's where I'm actually at in my cycle right now. So I can really speak to, estrogen and testosterone is on the rise. And I feel really available and open to the world and very much relationally available. Um, yeah, I'm just going to look at my notes for a second. Yeah, basically, that's what's happening biologically. We're moving towards ovulation. The heat is rising. And in some ways, this is actually the time of month that we are biologically most similar to men. And that's when we can really get shit done. We can exercise hard. We can go hard. And basically, what that means in terms of what I've found relationally. And so I'm also curious to hear from you is that during this time, I feel really playful and available. I definitely like my libido. I can really tell if I'm paying attention, like day by day, it gets stronger and stronger, especially if I'm exercising and taking care of myself. But the heat, our estrogen, actually, we are physically building heat in our bodies, so we're actually getting hotter. But there's just this way that I can face the other with a lot of attention and availability, and I'm open to new things and playful and yeah, sexually quite alive.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I really relate to that, and I really think that this is for a relationship, like what I've noticed is like this, what is it, a week or so is really beautiful to because we often crave like flirty energy, right? And like spark and yumminess, and sometimes, especially in longer term relationships, it can like we're not in the habit of flirting anymore, and the mystery seems to have gone a little bit. But I really feel like if we take the power of this phase and allow that flirty energy to be creative, like I generally feel a lot of creativity and a lot of positivity. So it's also, I think, a time to like if you want to try out new things, like sexually, but also otherwise. But if you want to like take a little risk, I think it's a good time because you're generally more positive. Like if I want to explore a certain edge, but I'm not sure if I really want it, I really think that this is a nice time because I feel like, yeah, I feel like in the springtime of like the endless possibilities. And if it wouldn't go well, I also wouldn't be too bothered by it. Like, well, okay, that was a great experiment. So I think it's a beautiful time to yeah, to experiment and be inspired, and to gather in your relationship as well. Like if you want to have, a conversation about the future or about vision, I would definitely do that. Also, like not like late in the cycle when it's more like, oh no, I can't think about the future, I'm overwhelmed. But like in this springtime of like, yeah, let's, let's plan, let's think about this year. Let's talk honestly. I think there's a lot of capacity for honesty as well. And to be, like you said, like to be available for the truth of the other person as well.
I love it. And mind you, we're starting with the follicular phase right after menstruation, but it's happening right after menstruation, which we'll get to, but it's such an internal time. So I loved what you said about reigniting like that flirtation. I think that part of the power of honoring the phases of the cycle is that if you are honoring your bleed phase, when you get your period, that is not the time where you're super social or like wanting even like to face your partner. You might get a kick out of this, right? Like different mammals have different menstrual cycles, right? Like cats, maybe it's like twice a year, like goats are once a year where they'll go into heat, in the spring, in the fall. I don't even know exactly. Sorry. I don't know my animal chronobiology so well. Um, but we as humans, we're every single month facing the other in this like mating dance, and it's a lot. It's a lot of time and energy put into relationship. So when you're on your period, to really not be orienting towards the other, towards the mating, the courtship, the flirtation, to go inward, so that then when you transition out of menstruation and into your follicular phase, there can be that renewing and that springtime energy of like, hi, remember me? Like, I'm back. And that also gives your partner time to decompress and not necessarily have to be on with you. Like maybe they're bringing you a hot water bottle or some tea or you're cuddling a little, but it's not, my partner and I will like watch movies together during my period. But in my follicular phase, yeah, I want to like plan a trip or like eye gaze.
Totally, totally. And I think like, I mean, we're gonna get into that as well, of like how to communicate it, because for a partner, especially to know, especially for if it's a male partner, to know, um, like you can be in winter if you know spring is gonna come, right? Like then you can take the goodness of winter. But if you're worried that it might be winter for the rest of your life, like it's not so fun anymore. So there's a
Totally.
big part in letting them know. Yeah.
And I think we definitely need to get there in this conversation because I know I'm changing so much throughout my month. For my partner is male bodied, and I know yours is too. For them, they don't have a cycle, they don't even know. And suddenly, and we're changing so rapidly. I think it's really important that we think about how to educate them to be able to think about us, and so we can stay connected. So, to maybe we go from follicular into ovulation,
Yeah, let's go
to
through
continue.
them.
Okay, cool. Well, ovulation is essentially like a more intense version of the follicular phase. It's super fun. It's like really the time when you can get pregnant, quite literally. Estrogen, testosterone peak. Your cervix drops lower and is more open. That's why penetrative sex can feel really, really good during this time. Our bodies want us to reproduce. And so it's really setting us up for all of the right circumstances. I don't know about you, but I tend to glow. Like I notice, like I just like look really pretty. Like everything I say, people think it's funny. It's quite, it's amusing to see that somehow this biochemical medley instigates my ability to be and feel fabulous. And so relationally, I'm very much available for a partner for contact. And also, though different from the follicular phase, in the follicular phase, I really want to play and experiment, like you were saying. And there's something actually a little bit more raw about the ovulatory phase, like I don't know if this is good or not, and I'll get the feedback if it isn't. Like, I kind of want to fuck. Like, like forget the foreplay. Like, like let's go. And there's just more of this like carnal energy that I'm really interested in my partner as a sexual being during
Yeah.
this time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I also think it's super beautiful because there is something like deeply nourishing about our primal nature, but it's not always so obvious, like how to access that. And for sure, the world does not hold a vision of like primalness being as sacred as sacredness, right? Like there, in many parts of the world, there's not a lot of container to be in your primal nature. And I think in this phase, when it's sort of so obvious, like our hormones are bringing it on, to own that and to enjoy it, and to be nourished by it. I think for me at least, it's a very like nourishing phase as well, and for my partner as well, because we like our relationship can hold so much if we access our wild energies. It's also like I feel for me, but also very much for my partner, that it's a time in which he can fully like express himself and have his energy, not just his sexual energy, but therefore also his creative energy, his life energy flow through him without having to hold back, without having to like take care of me or be nice. I feel it's a big relief often, and it also almost like, if we do it well, I would say it prevents conflict throughout the rest of the month, because energy has been flowed through and it didn't get stuck or like stagnated. So I think
Yeah,
it's really a phase that keeps us healthy and keeps our
totally.
energy healthy.
Yeah, I mean, the ovulation phase, I love what you said that there's a way that he can also channel in the ovulation phase for you that carnal desire. And because we are hormonally like kind of at our height, we're like essentially, if you think of your menstrual cycle as like some sort of roller coaster, right? Or like we're at the peak, we're at the top. So there's a way that I can handle it all. And so I'm not going to be bugged by him. Like I'm kind of easy emotionally, and there's a capacity for a lot of energy for sure to be
Yeah.
in this. Um, so it's definitely a very fun time relationally to build intimacy through sexuality, I would say. I love what you said too. It's not really so much that I feel that I need to be taken care of or thought about. Like it's not romantic phase. Like
Hmm.
it's it's the more raw phase, and I very much tend to appreciate it a lot. But I definitely can say, and I think that maybe we talk about a pitfall of the ovulation phase, is that I so badly want to be met in that carnal way that if my partner isn't there, right, relationally, that can be frustrating for me. Because I'm just like, let's go. Like, what are you doing
Yeah.
later? What are you doing later? Like, I want to have that type of intense physical and sexual contact. And so if he's not available during the ovulation phase for me sexually, that can be very frustrating. And so I
Yeah.
do think that self pleasure, and I love that you keep speaking about creativity, finding expression for the intensity of the estrogen and testosterone peak of ovulation to really express itself beyond the relational realm, I think is a good thing. And I think this is, where I'm going on runs like every day during this time, or, dancing or kind of exerting myself physically, because hormonally I'm poised to do that successfully, and my biochemistry will respond well to that sort of intense activity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
Okay,
love that. And okay, let's go to the next one. Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
Great. We've done our follicular phase, the spring of the body, into ovulation this summer, and so now we move into the luteal phase, the third phase of the cycle, right after ovulation. And ovulation, estrogen, testosterone peak, we're fertile, and then as the hormones peak, they begin to drop. And so this being the autumn of the body, really at first the drop isn't particularly intense, so it begets a level of emotional stability. It's time to kind of like get shit done. That's like what I think about. And I, in some ways, balance out emotionally and sexually, and like kind of physically in general. I'm relaxed. We call it at OVA Moon. We call it the stabilize
Mm,
period. It's a
mm,
stable period, and and that's actually the first part of the luteal phase. At OVA Moon, we break it down into two sections: the early luteal and late luteal, because there was really a dramatic shift. If you think about early autumn, the leaves are just starting to change. There's that feeling in the air, versus like late autumn before winter, like the leaves
yeah.
have fallen. A very different feeling.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so in the early luteal phase, relationally, I'm much more interested in like the friendship of my partner. Like, you know, the flirtation of the follicular and ovulatory phase shifts. And while it's still definitely there, while I have a sex drive and the libido is there, there isn't an urgency that I felt in the ovulatory phase. I feel much more like relationally oriented. I'd love to go on a walk. Like, what's going on with your work life? Can I tell you, like, let's workshop what's going on? Like, yeah, I'm interested in him as a person.
Yeah. It totally feels like that to me as well. Like there's something of like the goodness of late summer in a way. Like if I think
Right.
about it seasonally, like basking in the goodness, but also already being quite fulfilled.
Yeah,
So nothing needs to be done, and you can just enjoy beauty together, enjoy life together, enjoy nature together, like
right.
those kind of
I love.
things. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
you can't get pregnant once you've ovulated. So after you've ovulated in this luteal phase, like you're no longer impregnatable for that cycle. And so and so what you're speaking to, right? It's almost like the later part of a journey of love, like where it's not as charged and you can really, instead of looking at each other, be looking out together into
Yeah,
the world.
beautiful. Yeah.
So then we go into our late luteal phase. And so that's when estrogen is dipping lower. And what catalyzes menstruation in the bleed phase is that estrogen reaches its lowest point. And so introduces in the luteal phase progesterone, which is calming to the system. But what happens in the late luteal phase as estrogen gets lower is that well, I should say actually in the second half of the cycle, both early luteal and late luteal, our exertion from a biochemical standpoint shifts. And so for us to do really hard, intense cardiovascular work is not actually what our body needs from an exercise standpoint. And that analogy can be translated sexually as well. It's certainly, listen, if you're having fun, you want to go like, you know, hard and strong, great by all means, but relationally speaking and sexually, there is an impetus hormonally for a certain calming that's happening, just to say. But in the late luteal phase, this is really when I start to turn more inward. I'm internalized. And this is where if I'm not tracking things relationally, or sorry, if I'm not tracking things inside my body relationally, I can start to pull and be like, where are you? I want more of you. Like, you know, like I'm wanting a lot of energy because I'm feeling like I have low energy. And if my expectation is that I continue to be strong like I was in the first half of my cycle, I'm actually working against my biochemistry. Uh,
Interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I really that makes a lot of sense. For me, this is really a phase of if again like you said, if I'm not tracking it, I might get into like conversations that kind of blow up or become emotional. Um, I tend to like have sudden like quite early PMS, I would say like sudden like anger, getting really angry over something small or suddenly crying and like, this is kind of weird. So it's really important for me to know what's going on in my body and relationally to really not, because sometimes there's almost like a tendency like, okay, now I want to have this nasty conversation with you, and it's really not the time to do it because there's just not enough clarity oftentimes, and
yeah.
not enough energy to really deal with things. But it's more like, I would say, if I go smoothly to this through this phase, I feel more in the coziness of it, but definitely not trying to figure out heavy stuff or complicated situations or
Yeah.
make like intense future plans. Always the future kind of overwhelms me in that moment. So if my partner would be like, "Okay, let's talk about in 3 months," I'm like, "No, no, can do it, can do it."
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
to know that is such a relief,
Hmm.
such
Hmm.
a relief.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, you know, and I think mentally, although our hormones are shifting, mentally we're still completely there, and we'll go into menstruation shortly, you know, but I think making that distinction of what to share and what not to share is really important, and that we shift our expectations relationally um, yeah, it's, we coexist well during this time, but if I'm trying to like have some sort of deep interaction, and I don't know, but my partner has shared that in my late luteal phase, he experiences less attraction to me, and hormonally, I'm not really giving off that vibe anymore. And I used to get really upset about it. And now I appreciate that acceptance. And, I'll still have a sex drive during this time. But yeah, it's really important that I'm turning inward too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
and I
maybe,
think hmm, what
no,
you
no,
say, like with your partner expressing that, I think like this is the beauty of knowing all of this is, I think, I mean, the point of why we're doing this is to say don't stress out over anything, like don't make a problem, but just understand what it is. I think it's quite beautiful if your partner picks up, like even if it comes through being less attractive, but he picks up a change. And if I think if you know each other very well, it can come to a point where your partner might say like, "Oh, I notice this in myself. That must mean she is in that phase. So okay, what do I know about this relationally? Like, how are we going to be good in this moment?" I think it's super beautiful.
yeah. And sometimes, right, this is the phase where people get PMS. And again, we've got our amazing supplement, which supports that, and also lots of research and education on our website and our emails and our free ebook talking about how to balance your blood sugar so that PMS is much more easy, and balance your hormones in general beyond our supplement. Um, but still, hormonally, we have less energy during this time, and the demands of our life don't tend to change, right? This world is not made around the menstrual cycle. It's made around the circadian rhythm of 24 hours, as we were talking about. And so having a partner who understands that we are cycling beings means that they can ask us, maybe in a tense moment, hey, I'm just curious, like, where are you at in your cycle? And then we can be like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm about to get my period. And then we can say like, okay, maybe it's not to share right now. I'm mindful that maybe we go to menstruation to kind of finish out this part of the conversation. Um, so when you start to bleed, um, this time is really the time of release. It is such a sacred internal moment where I personally become, in some ways, unavailable to the world. It's really like my body's time to release what doesn't serve. I am physically releasing the lining of the uterus, right? That was not built, that was built up and was not inseminated. And so, because of that, there's a figurative and a literal death. And that is really our time to be with ourselves. And don't get me wrong, there can be moments of passion. I'm not against period sex. Like, I'm not against having connected moments. It's not that I'm saying you have to turn off, but there's a self awareness, like, this is what's happening, that I think can really give us more self acceptance. Um, Interestingly, though, the two hemispheres of the brain, the right and left side, communicate 25% more during this time. And so it really is to say that insights about what is and isn't working in the relationship or in parts of your life are not to be dismissed. They're they're poignant and important. And so, but it isn't the time to act. That's really that's follicular, ovulatory, and early luteal. Late luteal and menstruation is the internal moment in time.
Totally. I really love that. Knowing that about the brain, I didn't know that because I always feel super clear.
Yeah.
But I don't feel super outspoken. Like it's more like clarity in myself. And if I try to have a deep conversation about it, it often doesn't quite work that way. But I
It's
actually really love like the day that I start bleeding, there's this relief in my system. It's like, and it's like literally I get more clear in my head. But it's
mm,
definitely relationally for me a time to have it, make sure that it's okay and that my partner knows that I'm not ignoring him or dismissing him, but I'm really like in my own bubble. It's almost like I don't really see him there. I love his company often, but I also like it's almost a little bit indifferent. Like I love it when you're here, but really where like 90% of my attention is sort of in my own internal world.
Yeah. And the menstrual phase, I think it's really our time. It's what differentiates us and makes us unique during this bleed phase from male-bodied people. And so we get to claim it for ourselves. So maybe we talk about a little bit how to communicate with a significant other, about how the menstrual cycle works. And I want to say that maybe we're being a bit gendered here, that I think for the sake of conversation, we're talking about male-bodied people or people who don't have menstrual cycles. So that we're thinking that they're not actively experiencing a menstrual cycle and couldn't have the relational understanding what might be going on.
Yeah.
Um, so what, yeah, please.
But although I do want to say that I actually believe, and I have no idea if this is actually the truth, but that men or male bodies also go through cycles. And by me, like, acknowledging and accepting the fact that that's the case and sharing that, I've noticed in my partner who is a male body person that he also starts to notice like, huh, these days, like something is different in me. And I don't think we actually know biologically what's going on, but there's just more acceptance of the fact that he's also not like like a solid, steady rock all the time, every day. Yeah.
Fascinating. We should have we'll have to talk about that more. Helping men tune into themselves through the power of our menstrual cycle. We're gonna have to
Right?
talk. Okay. That's awesome. Um, okay, so first of all, so let's say that's it for another time, but I love it. This is for me what I find is really important, which is first, like, let's pretend we have a partner who doesn't know anything about the menstrual cycle. Why would he? We didn't even get told very much. Um, I think a big piece is getting curious, like asking what he might already know about the menstrual cycle. And we might be surprised, like maybe he knows that it's because of the menstrual cycle that women can get pregnant. Maybe he knows, right, that cramps are notorious, or periods are notoriously painful. Like, he might have certain pieces of things that we can kind of use to help orient them. Um,
Yeah.
and then I think, yeah, and then I think another piece is to go easy, right? Like if they don't know much, or if they're like, ew, I don't want to know, or they get squirmy, to not shame them. I think that helping men get educated on how to actually be men in support of women is a new thing in these recent generations. And so expressing gratitude for their openness to having the conversation. And I'm not saying to validate that it's okay that they would be squirmy, because obviously there's nothing to be ashamed of with our cycles, but to recognize that they are a result of our cultural upbringing just as we are. And yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um did you
Yeah,
want to?
totally. And yeah, I feel like sometimes like depending on their level of like engagement and interest, sometimes it might even make more sense to not like, it has so can have the flavor of your parents doing sex ed, like, okay, we
Right.
gotta sit down now and talk about this, which is like or can be like that. So
Totally.
what I really like, I mean, what I like to say generally to couples is have regular check-ins.
Yeah.
Like when you live together, have daily check-ins. When you don't live together, have a check-in when you start your meeting, or the time that you're gonna spend together, and really as a way, because we forget to ask like what's really going on, how are you really doing, and to actually drop in together and go from there, rather than walk in with our expectations and assumptions and all of that, but unspoken. So a really easy way is to, like, if you do a little check-in, to say, oh, I'm feeling this and this. Oh, I'm guessing that it's because I'm in this part of my cycle. So it's like you start to bring it into your language and into your, like, sharing your awareness of it. And that I feel like might make a partner curious to, oh, really? Like, and what about the other cycles then? Or something like that.
I just learned something new. I love it. Thank you. I definitely going to use that. I love that. So, I mean, if you're able in your relationship to have regular check-ins, I think it's such a great time to share what phase of the cycle you're in and what the corresponding feelings, emotions, desires, repulsions, etc. are. I think that's amazing. So, I love that. And I also appreciate your distinction about having that sex ed talk, and that could be potentially triggering to someone. With that said, I think that part of it, is if you're like, okay, we're getting educated about our bodies, and I'm realizing it's important for me to share this with my partner. So to say like, hey, like I have a menstrual cycle, and that's not just when I have my period, it's like happening all month. There are 4 phases of it. And so I'm going to be changing throughout the month. Let them have their feelings and be in gratitude. And then really start with these basics, right? Like there are 4 phases, like, whatever it is, like there's and naming what they are and like what we shared a little bit of the
Yeah,
differences.
comparing to the seasons is super easy.
Yeah, that's a one. It's perfect. Thank you. And I think also allowing them to ask questions. And if you don't know the answer, being like, yeah, I don't know. And you can bring them into the journey and then you can look it up and be like, hey, by the way, it turns out like this is what's going on with ovulation. That's why I'm really horny during that time, or, or whatever it is. Like, I think, um, yeah, like letting them be curious and being kind of humble and saying like, yeah, let's find that out together. It could be useful.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so the last thing I want to say that I think is really important, and I'm just like so ignited by your idea for the check-in thing. Like I can't wait to do that the minute I'm off the phone with you. But I think part of that is as we understand these different phases of our cycle, learning how to get vulnerable and share about the impact, how our cycles impact our lives. And I think this is where the intersection actually of sexism comes in, where men will inadvertently, right? I don't know so many men who like explicitly think women are less powerful or less good than men. But I think there are ways that because men don't understand that we're different in these biological ways, they don't know how to tune in. And so when we're able to share that, hey, when I'm on my period, it's really hard for me to be at work. Or I know that you're really excited to run all of these errands, but I'm about to get my period and I'm exhausted, and it just like it depletes me in a way that in a week from now, like I would then love to go with you to Target or like go
Totally.
grocery shopping. And so
Yeah,
by being vulnerable, that allows him to understand what we're going through as menstrual cycle beings, that our lives are different and that we're actually up against a system and a world that was not made for our biochemical reality. And I
totally.
think that creates a bond of solidarity, that means that they can think about us too. And if they're able to think about us, then, I would say that I extend that hope and that prayer for their relationships with other women, whether it's in the work, whether it's friendships or family or in work life, whatever it is, that they can be more sensitive to the fact that every menstrual cycle person of reproductive age, every, woman or female bodied person of this age is actually actively going through this all the time.
Yeah.
And that's part of the political act, I think, is really bringing them into the conversation.
Yeah, beautiful. And I would almost add to that, like with that sensitivity for their partners, that again, like it's sort of an allowance or permission to be sensitive to themselves as well, and also not having to live up to a world and a system that I think is for no one really healthy in many cases.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, it's a permission slip. Like if we start sharing of what is actually happening in our inner world, it's very likely that a partner will think, oh, interesting, what's actually up with me, and also have more understanding and more compassion, and therefore also probably more willpower to say, no, actually, I'm gonna do what's true for me, and I'm not gonna just answer to the world as it demands, because it will keep demanding forever.
Yeah, it will.
Uh,
The systems, the The economic systems that play right now do not make it easy for anyone to,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
S-
so I want to, yeah, please, sorry.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say the same thing. Like let's talk about some of the practices, right, that couples can do in a different phase. Or did you have something else in mind?
No, I love that. I think that we should go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, one thing like we already talked about is the daily or like regular check-in. I think that that's really the foundation of every relationship to stay current with each other, with yourself, and to practice, the art of being honest and the art of holding space for your partner and not taking things too personally, right? Like to really be
Totally.
able to be a witness to the sharing of your partner when your partner says, I'm not so attracted, I'm not feeling sexual, I'm actually annoyed all the time. Like to really be able to witness that and hold that as their experience is super, super beautiful. And then
Totally.
there's another practice that is also more of a communication practice that I think is super beautiful to do at least regularly throughout the month because the answers will change so much, which is basically going back and forth, asking each other, what do you desire? For a couple minutes, like repeating the question, what are you afraid of? And what do you love about me? Like
Oh,
those questions are such a good access to like a deeper, deeper connection, dropping in together. And you'll notice throughout the month, like what you will answer to, what do I desire? What am I afraid of? Like it will change. And you might start to notice patterns. And it's just a very, very beautiful practice anyway to do. Also, a beautiful practice to do before. I mean, I don't think you should always do it before having sex because, sometimes you're just gonna have sex and you're not gonna like do the whole thingy. But especially if there is like a desire for intimacy, for sexuality, but you're not sure yet where it's gonna go or what you actually want, or it feels a little bit like, I'm not really getting there. It's really, really beautiful to share. What am I afraid of? What do I desire? And what do you love about me? Is just always a good question.
it's so good. I wrote it down.
Nice. And then I would say like in the first phase, it's a word that I find so hard. Can you say it?
The follicular
The
phase.
follicular phase. I think that is a very, very beautiful phase to like springtime, like slowly build up the pleasure, build up the tension, build up the joy. So for example, doing like penis pussy massage, like really diving into each other's body, being exploratory, giving the space. Also, it's not, you probably won't be having like looking into each other's eye, boom, sex. Like you're building up
Right.
the sensation, and you're playing with the sensation as well. You're playing with that open space of like, everything is possible. I'm just here to find out what's pleasurable for you, for me. Like being explorers together is I think super beautiful in that phase.
Sorry, I'm taking it. Yeah, 100%. I love,
And
uh,
then probably, go ahead.
I know I'm just loving what you're saying. It's amazing.
And then probably as you go like into ovulation, like we said, like the longing to just have sex, to just be fucked can be really, it doesn't have to, but can be really present. So I feel like that's really a beautiful phase to just go for it. Like, it um take that energy, and also like we already talked about that, like be mindful that you don't become demanding and that you still stay resourced in yourself, that you make sure that you have outlets for your energy, for your creativity, for your juiciness, go dancing, like all of those things, that it doesn't just put pressure on our partners, because really maybe they're not in the mood, and that's also valid. Like they're also allowed to say, well, actually not right now.
It's
So
such
staying.
an, it's a very social time.
Yes,
Yeah.
like going out, going dancing, going dinners, and really be in the juiciness of it. And if you do find each other sexually, I think it's a beautiful time to be in the wildness, be in the animal, be in our animal nature. Explore, if you want to explore edges or things like that. I think it can be super beautiful to just follow the impulse, basically. um, ignore daily life and just have sex in the morning. Like those kinds of things that just make often make us feel like so good and like we're in the magic of life and all that. I think that's super beautiful in that phase.
Beautiful.
And then, so then when we move out of that, like in the first part of the luteal phase, staying with the goodness, like we also already talked about that, but staying with the goodness. And I feel like this is also a phase, like when you sort of want to have conversations that are around like, hey, how are we doing? How is our relationship doing? Like just more than a daily check-in, more like an, relationship check-in. Are there things, are there patterns that haven't been serving us in the last weeks? Are there things that we want to implement to have sort of these conversations in a space of love and acceptance and, curiosity? I feel like can be quite easy in that phase because you're sort of in as if it's a summer night, like it's a summer night, you're having a drink together, the moon comes up and you talk about life and relationship.
I love it. This is so helpful. This is awesome.
Yeah, and sexually, I would say, especially when you move into that later luteal phase, I mean, you can always follow your flow. I find it really nice to have like more like co-regulation practices. So meaning practices that allow the bodies to be together and basically feel safe together. Practices that allow like the bonding hormones of the body to be activated and do things like eye gazing, like breathing together, maybe massages, but not necessarily sexual massages or depending on your energy. Another beautiful thing, like just very beautiful, super nourishing practice can be is to do like a five senses awakening, like bringing things for all the senses, like smell, taste, touch, whispering loving things in their ears, like having some sort of like nourishing bonding rituals together. I think can be super beautiful. And then, like, I mean, like you said, in menstruation or when we're bleeding, it's very much up to the individual. I feel like some women love having sex when they're bleeding and some not at all. So I really feel like and maybe 1 month you do and 1 month you don't. But, once you know and your partner knows, like, I'm in this phase and it's really okay to be turned in.
Yeah.
It's also really okay to say, for the coming 3 days, I'm just not going to engage so much.
Yeah.
But maybe, like, I have such a loving partner. Like, he's just like, oh, can I make you food? Can I make you breakfast?
Yeah.
What would you like? Like, if you have a partner that's up for that, it can feel super, like, nourishing to be taken care of a little bit.
Totally. Totally. Beautiful. Thank you. I learned a lot from this. I'm excited to take more notes.
Try it
Um,
out.
I love that. And I think that maybe to end, one of the things that we haven't said that's really important is that I think both relationally and sexually, if we're thinking about the menstrual cycle, we can only go as far as we're willing to go in ourselves. And it's really important that we have done enough work to destigmatize our own relationship with our menstrual cycle, to no longer have shame about it, to recognize it's such a gift. It's actually a gateway to how we can thrive, both in our lives and in our relationships. And so once we have really gotten through any sort of shame we have, then we can bring it right in those check-ins. We can really say like, hey, this part of the month I would like to do like different play activities, but actually by the way, now I'm in my luteal phase, can we schedule a time to sit down and like look at how our relationship is going? And so that gives us such power and agency to show up in our relationships. And I think that that work, that what we're talking about relationally, what we're talking about the phases, is a gateway into that. um, and that it's really the foundational piece to do. It's really to accept our bodies and that this is something that's happening every single month, and we have an opportunity to thrive.
Yeah, totally,
Maybe we
totally.
end, share a little bit about your offerings, and I can talk a bit about OVA Moon, and we can say goodbye. What do you think?
Absolutely, that sounds great.
Okay,
Yeah, so I work with couples and individuals around their questions of love and relationships, like one on one. But I'm actually in 3 weeks, my program Passionate Partners is starting, which is a program
cool.
for couples of any configuration, really. And it's really specifically around sexuality. And I really dive into, our intimacy, our sexuality, how does that evolve throughout our relationship, and there's a lot of practices. So some of the practices that I just touched on, briefly in this conversation, I'll go much more in depth and give a lot of practices of what you can explore with, and also how to be with, because sexuality is such a vast topic and also holds so much potential, so much transformational power, and so much trauma. So there's a lot to explore there together. So it's really it's a 5 week series, but it's really a container of support and inspiration for couples for their intimacy and sexuality.
Amazing.
Um,
How do you
so yeah.
find, how do we find you?
So through my website, mariannawinter.com, or just shoot me a message here on Instagram or Facebook as well. Yeah.
Cool. Thank
Yeah, and
you.
I really want you to speak about OVA Moon. So actually, I'll just share real quick because I think it's such a great supplement, because I didn't have a period for years after quitting birth control. I was diagnosed with PCOS. I had no menstrual cycle for 4.5 years. And I started taking OVA Moon, and my cycle is back, and it's also regular. And I'm like, whoa, I feel like a whole different person. And so I'm super grateful for this supplement. So yeah, please share what it is all about, and how people can get it.
That makes me, I mean, that's really at the end of the day why we're doing this work, is just for that story right there. So thank you. Yeah, our supplement is amazing. It's a subscription service. You can sign up online, ovamoon.com, and it's sent right to your door every single month. We have a Stay Healthy special right now. If the discount code is uppercase Stay Healthy at checkout, and you can get $10 off for your first 3 months. And really, we considered how to build blood in the body, how to keep energy high, how to keep immunity functioning really well. So we've got zinc and vitamin C and shatavari, which is an adaptogen specifically for female bodied people. Um, we thought about menstrual cramps, we thought about hormone regularity, a lot of different things. And so we spent about 2 years working with naturopaths, doctors, herbalists, and acupuncturists to concoct this formula. And I'm obsessed with it. I don't skip a day. I haven't taken it yet today. I have to today. And it's just a game changer. I personally no longer have PMS, and the longer I take it, the longer I see different benefits. I used to still have breast soreness. Now I don't have any. Mine, I mean, in some, I used to get sick every few months, and now I never get sick. And some things that have nothing to do with the menstrual cycle, I could never grow my nails out, and suddenly I have long nails for the first time. So it's really similar to a prenatal, but I think we catered it for women who aren't necessarily actively trying to get pregnant, but who want to remain fertile and healthy in their bodies. So yeah,
Beautiful.
we're really,
Thank you so much. I mean, it's been such a
yeah,
journey, to actually get all the knowledge and get it all into one magic pill. I think that's really beautiful. I'm very grateful that you did that.
thank you. Well, I loved this. This was so amazing. Thank you.
Yes.
Really
Yes.
new information for my relationship that I'm going to use and sync with my cycle. So,
Yeah, and
what
and
a
really
gift.
for everyone, feel free to reach out with questions, with shares, with concerns, like reach out to either one of us. And I'm always happy to be in conversation about love and relationships and sexuality. And I think both of us really hold a vision of uh, you know, making those things not having to be personal failures or insecurities, but really like sharing and realizing we're all having similar questions, we're all having similar struggles, we're all having similar desires. So let's share with each other and see how we can support.
Amen. All right, I'll talk to you later. Have such a great day.
Mwah.
Bye. Remember the IGTV. Okay, how do I get out of here?